It's going to be beef, bacon, butter, and eggs for 90 days. And I laughed out loud. I mean, I thought, you must be joking me, because that sure is not healthy. And she said, well, actually it is.
Alan, how did you find carnivore?
Well, Dave, this was a February of 2023. Actually, a couple months before that, we were talking with an acquaintance of mine that I met through my business. I'm retired now in the last few weeks, but this wonderful lady was a nurse, and she traveled around to different hospitals in the area that we live, and just one of the nicest people I've ever talked to. And this was right as COVID was starting, so I just developed a kind of a friendship with her on the telephone, and then finally met her. And her husband run a rescue ranch for horses that have been neglected and abused. And also at the same time, it's a ranch to rescue children who have been neglected and abused through either drug addicted parents or abuse of any kind. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful couple. And so my wife and I got to know them, and went to their ranch and visited with them a couple of times. And this was in 2023. I'm going to say, probably sometime in January. And we were just sitting around talking, and talking about our health and issues and the frustration we were having with our local doctors. My wife and I had different doctors, but it was through the same clinic, and we just weren't happy. And she said, well, I've got the doctor for you. And she said, I'm going to give you the name and the number, and you tell them that I sent you. And it's a practice that limits patients, how many patients that they have, because it's a direct primary care. It doesn't work through insurance or is not affiliated with any clinic or hospital. She's an independent doctor. And we were fortunate that we got in, and my wife and I had our appointments one day apart. And it was the most amazing experience. Walked in to her office, and they took me right into the examination room. There was no waiting. And between her nurse and her, I spent an hour and 15 minutes. I've never spent that long with a doctor in my life, and just talked about everything. She wanted to know. She asked me a lot of questions. I told her what all my issues were. And she, as I was explaining things to her, she kind of knowingly smiled and gave me that I understand. And inflammation. Everything was inflammation related. And I knew a little bit about that, but not much. And as she went on, and we talked more and more, and she said, what I'd like to have you do is I would like you to try carnivore for 90 days. And I said, well, I've heard the word carnivore, but what do you mean try carnivore? What? She said, well, I want you to eat nothing but meat. It's going to be beef, bacon, butter, and eggs for 90 days. And I laughed out loud. I mean, I thought, you must be joking me, because that sure is not healthy. And she said, well, actually it is. And so she went on and explained it to me. And the more she talked, the more it made sense. But she said, I'm going to give you some resources. Don't just take my word for it. Look into it. And one of the first names she gave me was Dr. Ken Berry. And then she gave me a list. And boy, that night we dove right into it and started watching these videos. And I was amazed at all these different doctors who had discovered, and as you know all the ones that I'm talking about. Dr. Chaffee, and the heart surgeon, Dr. Philip Ovadio, who's done over 3,500 heart surgeries, and he's talking about it. And my wife and I probably, I mean, we've spent, I can't even tell you, Dave, it's been a lot of hours. I mean, there for a while, every night we came home, we sat down and we watched because it was so fascinating. And it was so, listening to other people and the things they're going through, and you're going, yeah, I've got that. And they're cured, or they're doing much better and seeing big results. And, it just seemed so unbelievable. And so that's how we started. And our doctor, she's just wonderful. And the only medication I was on at the time was for allergies. I've had allergies since I was a child. When I was a child, it was an allergy shot every Saturday. My mom and I both, we had allergies so bad we had to go get an injection every Saturday. And that went on for years until they finally had an oral medication. And I don't know, I was probably 11 or 12. And they came out with, a pill you could pop that would do basically the same thing. So I went to that, and that was a nice thing, getting away from all those injections. But over the course of the years, I would come to a point where they were less effective, and I would have to change. They would have to give me a different type, different brand, different dosages. But allergies caused a lot of problems for me when I was young, and so I told her, I said, well, the only thing I'm on is this. It's called levocetirizine, 5 milligram. It's a very small pill. And that was, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, my other doctor put me on that, and it was a game changer. It really, I'd come to that point again with what I was taking before wasn't really working that well. And this really did the job. But my other doctor was concerned that he says, I don't want you taking this all the time. I want you to get off of it for a few months. I said, oh, I stop as soon as we have a frost, and then I don't take it during the winter. I don't need it. But I would have to start taking it usually in February or no later than March to get myself built up for the coming allergy season. She said, so my new doctor said, I would really like to I'd like to wean you off of that. So I don't know what the problems are, but there are concerns about long-term use with this medication. So she said, I'd like to, so that was in February of 2023. And I just took it upon myself to never start. I just didn't start taking them like I normally did. Because I was about ready to start within a couple of weeks of seeing her to get built up, as I said. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to try this. And I was into the carnivore. I dove, like I said, I dove right in. I didn't wean myself off of other things. I just went straight into it. And I'll tell you, Dave, it was mind-boggling, but I didn't have any allergy symptoms last year for the first time in my life. And I would get so bad in late summer when ragweed came out. Ragweed would lay me flat. And I would have to go into my other doctor and get an injection. I think it was a steroid. And if I didn't do that, I was sick as a dog. There'd be 2 or 3 days where I was so bad that sometimes I couldn't even go to work. I was so miserable. So this past year, no allergy medication. I didn't get the shot for ragweed like I normally did. I had some mild symptoms during the ragweed, but nothing like what I had before. And I took some over-the-counter Sudafed or something. I think I took 2 several days apart, and I was just getting a little bit bothered, but oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I was pinching myself that I got through allergy season without a daily pill, and then without that shot in the mid to late summer. I think it was usually around the end of July. And I don't know what else to attribute it to. It has to be the carnivore.
That's awesome. And as someone, based on where I'm living at the time, as someone who suffers really bad allergies, yeah, there's nothing better than to be allergy free. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, this is great. Your doctor basically said to you, go carnivore. So you started carnivore kind of, I guess, late February 23.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So it's this past February was a year, and I have a lot of issues that um, as we all say, everybody reacts differently time wise. I've been a little slower at the improvements, but they're coming sure and strong. There's no doubt about it. Some of my other issues, I was diagnosed at 18 years old with scoliosis. I didn't know I had it. At the time, the company I was working for, I was doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I was hurting myself. I wasn't lifting properly. I wasn't trained how. I mean, that's been decades ago. Nobody talked about safety and proper lifting techniques. And one day I had an episode where my arm started tingling and went numb, and scared the heck out of me. And I called my doctor the next day, and then they referred me to a specialist. I went to the specialist, and they said, you have a birth defect. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And he said, you have scoliosis. I said, well, this is the first time I've heard that. And the lifting I did was done so improperly that I cracked 3 discs. And then come to later find out that some of my discs were fused together at birth. So I've got areas of my spine that don't have a disc. It's not properly spaced. So week back, and my life was never the same after that episode. I had horrible pain. I was very limited in what I could do. And it took me years to learn that, I can't lift that. And I would say, well, I can do it. And then I would hurt myself, and I'd be laying flat sometime for days. It took me several years to finally figure it out that, there's certain things that I can't do. So it has curtailed my activities throughout my whole life. Maybe a little bit of it is fear, because there are some things that, if it goes the wrong way, could cause me even more problems, I've been told by the specialist. So caution is in order. But some of the things that I love to do, I love to do projects around the house. I love to detail cars, and that means washing, waxing, cleaning. I do for friends and family, and earn a little money on the side once in a while, but take care of our own cars. It's just something I enjoy. It's very relaxing. I go out in the garage, but I haven't been able to hand wash a car for years because I can't do the bending. I can't do the stooping. If I do, I'm paying for it for days. Have trouble the next day standing up straight, and just pain. Well, this last summer, as we were really getting into the carnivore, I noticed that when I did have pain, my recovery was much quicker. And so I started to do a little bit more, and I couldn't do things like weeding, weeding the yard, the flower beds, and my wife can't do it all. We were actually hiring somebody to do it. I just couldn't keep up with it because I couldn't spend more than maybe 10 minutes on my knees in the pulling weeds, and then I paid for it for days afterwards. And that's not exaggeration. I mean days. And so last summer I started to feel better. My back started to feel better. So I started hand washing our cars, and the next day I felt fine. Maybe a little tender, but I'm going to say 80% better and more able to do it. This year I'm doing it, and I the next day I'm absolutely fine. I spent over an hour, about an hour and 20 minutes in the yard last week, one night weeding. I just kept going and going, and I did a little stretching afterwards, and I woke up the next day thinking, oh boy, what's this going to be? And I felt fine. So these are big deals in my life that I've overcome. And it's the only thing different I'm doing is carnivore. I'm not doing any special exercising, which I should be. I'm doing a little weightlifting now, but and this is also on doctor's orders. And I also have hip bursitis of the hips. And I had an episode a few weeks ago. I overextended my leg getting out of a high pickup truck that I was riding in. And I was being stupid. There's a running board, and I went right over that and extended my leg down the ground. And that really aggravates my hips when I do something like that. And I was uncomfortable for 3 or 4 days and did some specific stretches for it. But before this, when I did that, it would be weeks where I couldn't lay on my side. And I'm a side sleeper. I would go back and forth. I would wake up several times a night and go back and forth. This time it only lasted, 3 or 4 days, and it wasn't as bad. And it's been great ever since. And, I went to the doctor to make sure that's what it was, and it was the bursitis. And really, there's not a lot you can do for it other than, some specific exercises and being careful. And the one thing that my doctor did not want to do, unless it was absolutely necessary, was that steroid shot, because there are side effects. So she's all about not doing those things if at all possible. So that has improved. I've also suffered with gum disease my whole life. A little over 10 years ago, I had laser surgery on my gums because it was getting to the point where my regular dentist could not do anything for me anymore. And it wasn't lack of home care. It was just genetics. He said, you're doing all the right things, but we need to do more. So he sent me to a specialist, and I reluctantly had the laser surgery, which is something that I wouldn't want to go through again, and I wouldn't want to see anybody go through it. But that was a little over 10 years ago. And ever since then, I've been on a 3-month recall between my regular dentist and my periodontist. I can't go any longer than 3 months for cleaning. So that's a lot. And, insurance doesn't pay for only 2 a year, and I'm doing 4 a year. And that's okay. I mean, it's gum health is important. So I had seen people talk about, including you, about the improvement in your gum health. And I kept waiting for that appointment where I was going to get a good result, and it just wasn't happening. As recently as 6 months ago, it wasn't great. It was no worse than before, but it wasn't really improving. And I told them what I was doing, that I had confidence that this was going to help me at some point. I just don't know when. But the periodontist assured me that, we can manage this, but we're still talking gum disease. This is something that you're going to have for the rest of your life, but we're managing it. I'm not overly concerned. The pocket measurements and all of that, some of them were kind of high. So approximately a month and a half ago, I had my next appointment with my periodontist, and the technician is doing the measurements with the gums, and she's calling out the numbers. And they were like a lot of 2s when they were 3, 4s, and 5s before. She was going 2, 2, 2, 2. And the other technician is writing down the numbers. And she got done with an area, and I grabbed her arm and I said, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I said, this has never happened. And she said, no, this is looking really good. And she kept going. I went from maybe I'm going to say 10 or 12 areas with minor bleeding from the when they do the poking to 2. My numbers were, she said, were 80% better than they were 6 months ago. And then when the doctor came in to do his examination, he looked at me and he says, Alan, he said, we're talking gum health now, not gum disease. And Dave, I almost cried, because this had been such a battle for me. And when I left, I got in the car and I called my wife right away. I couldn't wait to tell her. And I was on cloud 9 for days, because that was the thing that I was waiting for. And it took a while, but it happened. And again, nothing different in my life but the carnivore.
That's awesome. And it's so good to hear about your gums improving. Like, I've seen studies that have said that there's a link between gum disease, periodontitis, things like that, and other more complicated conditions like type 2 and type 3 diabetes. So that's
even heart disease.
Yeah.
It's bad enough.
Yeah. It's it's one of those things that seems to tie in. And I mean, the fact that carnivore makes it better would validate this. It seems to tie in with all the other metabolic conditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Oh, it was just absolutely. And when he said that to me, we're talking gum health now. And last time he said, we're still talking gum disease. That was just, my gosh, I couldn't have been happier.
Was he surprised though? Like, because this must be unusual for him to see this.
To be honest, I'm not real sure. I think there's some skepticism there when you talk to another doctor about carnivore. Some don't know anything about it. I've told my eye doctor that I'm on that, and he was familiar with it, and he said, keep doing it. But the periodontist wasn't that. I just don't think that interested, because maybe he just doesn't believe that that's the reason. Because nothing else has changed. My home care, I've always been on top of that, and I've always had very little plaque, and those aren't the issues. It's just whatever is in my genetics that causes these problems. And I've been told by multiple dentists that it's nothing you're doing wrong. It's just you, and you have to deal with it.
That's never a comforting piece of information to get from a doctor, right?
No, it's certainly not. But other things. I've got a list here. Those are the big things that have really changed my life. But I don't get sick. In this year, 14 months, I haven't been sick with a cold, flu, and I worked in an office environment closely with other people. I didn't get anything, and usually when I did get sick, it was mostly allergy related. It was sometime in the February, March, when even where we live, even in late February, I got an app on my phone to allergy alert. Here's what can trigger. And there have been years where in late February it was starting. And that would get everything going, the head and then the chest, and get all congested, and thinking that I've got a virus or something, and then go to the doctor. No, it's just allergies. But haven't had anything like that in 14 months. My sleeping is much improved. I snort a lot because of my allergies. I'm a mouth breather, and my nose has typically been it's typically plugged, especially during this time of year. But my wife said I was somewhere between a circular saw and a chainsaw. I don't know, but I could be pretty loud. And that went away. She was amazed. She said, I think that went away within a couple of weeks. And I don't even know how that's possible within a couple of weeks of starting carnivore, but it was much, much less. And now it's just absolutely non-existent. She says, I don't hear a peep out of you. And I actually, to be honest, I think I was on the cusp of sleep apnea, because she said that when I snort, sometimes I'd stop and I would make those noises, and then she'd have to shake me or jerk the bed and get me going again. I was not diagnosed with it. To be honest, I was afraid to get diagnosed with it, and I did talk to my doctor about it. But I didn't feel horrible during the day like some people do with sleep apnea. But I think there was something going on there with that. And I would even sometimes wake myself up gasping for air, where I was, not quite choking, but I was just something wasn't quite right. Haven't done that in months. So, that's improved. I've got very, very good energy levels. I'm, like I said, I've just retired here within the last few weeks, and I've been busy around the house. I just, a lot of activity, and I don't get tired. So when I started with this whole thing, Dave, the first thing my doctor did, even though she put me on the carnivore diet right away, she did a complete lab, and my A1C was at 5.7. I didn't even know what A1C was. My other doctor never checked for that. I don't know why. Never talked about it. My other labs in the past were generally very good, but how I got to pre-type 2 diet, when she told me I was pre-type 2, I said, well, she called me with the lab results and said, you're pre-type 2. And I said, well, you must be mistaken. That can't be. And I said, of all the things I've worried about with my health, of possibilities, that everybody thinks about, type 2 diabetes wasn't even, I never even considered it. So when she told me you're pre-type 2, and I said, well, what does that mean? She says, well, it's the number, and you're right at the cusp. You're at 5.7. She said that's the lower side, if I understood her correctly, the lower side of pre-type 2. But she said it's definitely something we need to be concerned about. But she says as long as you stay on this carnivore, that's going to improve. Well, in 3 months, I went back for my labs in 3 months, and it was it came down to 5.6, which wasn't a big move in 3 months, but 5.6 is considered normal, which that 0.1 to me seems like it's awful close. But then the next one, 3 months after that, was 5.3, which she said is beautiful. My insulin was at 6.3. Now it's at 1.8. Yeah, I mean, and my insulin resistance is now 0.4, which she said is fantastic. So all of those important markers they're beautiful. And my wife and I both go every 3 months. We want to keep tabs on this for the foreseeable future. The numbers just keep getting better and better. My total cholesterol, I started out at 189, which is pretty good. After 90 days, it went up to 202, which she wasn't concerned about at all because my HDL, my LDL, and my triglycerides were all good. But in another 90 days, my total cholesterol dropped to 168. So went 189, I went up for a little bit, and now it's down to 168. So I seem to be staying right around that number now. My HDL numbers are pretty consistent, 52 to 54. So she's real happy with where everything is at. And she said, just keep doing what you're doing. Some of the funnier things about this whole thing when it started, she said, I told her, I said, what am I going to eat for breakfast? I always took my breakfast and I ate in my office, and it was, like goat's milk yogurt, which is fairly healthy for you, but I would mix in cereal with that. And I was a cereal eater. I mean, I was like, like Seinfeld with all the boxes of cereal. I love cereal, but I didn't eat the junk. I ate what I thought was the good cereal, the whole grain, heart healthy, lots of fiber, and
low cholesterol.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the crunch, and I didn't buy any sweetened cereal. It was all good stuff. Well, I thought it was good stuff. Now I know the truth. But I would mix in 2 to 3 different types in that yogurt, and then I would top it with blueberries. And that was my breakfast every morning. Then I would have lunch in my office, and it was always like the Healthy Choice brand frozen dinners with the good ingredients, I thought. Another brand, Amy's, which is a nothing meat based. It was always pasta and cheese and grains and lots of vegetables. And then I would have dinner. So three good meals a day. So when I started this, she said, you might only eat a couple meals a day, just see how you feel. But she said, eat as much as you can stand. So I asked her, I said, well, if I take, hard-boiled eggs, is that okay? Take that to work? And she said, yeah, that's great. I said, how many should I limit myself to? She said, don't limit yourself to any number. Eat as many as you want. I said, eggs? Really? And I've always thought over the years, even though, the FDA and the American Medical Association are telling us you should limit your eggs, but I've always felt that, an egg is a perfect food. God created that. Everything that is in it is good. But I, within reason, a few a week I thought was okay. I was eating 5 eggs a day. And then I would take some frozen sausage, beef sausage, pork sausage, and I'd put those in the microwave. So that was my breakfast every morning. No more grains, no more yogurt. And then I wasn't hungry for lunch. I ate about 10 o'clock, 10:30. No lunch, not even a snack. Didn't have any desire for a snack. Had no desire for anything sweet. And I was a carb addict, Dave. I mean, I was maxed out on carbs. I loved like tostada chips and salsa. I would come home, I would eat a half a bag without blinking an eye, standing up at the counter in the kitchen, not even sitting down, just scooping out that salsa. But okay, those tostada chips, those are good because they're whole grain, they're non-GMO, they're okay, they're good for you. Had no idea. Pasta, I love pasta. Oh my gosh. Potatoes, French fries, all of that stuff. But I always ate a lot of vegetables too. I loved vegetables. But now it's just it's eggs in the morning with some sausage or some ground beef, or the last couple of days I've had ground lamb. And then dinner, it's a steak, or it's many different kinds of steaks. It depends on what's on sale. Or it's bison burgers, and I usually eat 3 of those. And I eat till I'm stuffed, that I can't take another bite. And I actually lost 35 pounds doing that. And I really, I did need to lose some of the blubber around the middle section. As we guys get older, you get that gut going. And but I wasn't really trying. I didn't do any exercise, anything specific. That's what I was eating. And I got to the point where my doctor said, okay, I need you not to lose any more weight. You need to eat more. And my wife was with me at that time. She looked at her and she said, are you doing the cooking? She said, yes. And she said, you need to feed him more. Cause she said, I don't want you losing any more weight.
That I've got to say that that's always the best way to lose weight, is when you've got no intention to do it and it just falls off, right?
Yeah. And it fell off so easily. I was wearing 34. My waist was 34. I'm down to a 30 now. I just bought some new shorts because all the shorts I had from last summer were way too big. So that's the downside. You have to replace some clothing, but I don't care. I'm happy about that. And now I'm maintaining. I'm at a good weight. And like my doctor said, you're on a carnivore diet. I hate to use the word diet. It's not a diet. Lifestyle, carnivore lifestyle. That your body will find its appropriate weight, because you're getting, I don't eat any fruits, any vegetables anymore. Once in a while, I'll have some green beans because I love green beans and they are low carbs. I do a little bit of cheese, aged cheese, a little bit of dairy. I like the heavy cream in my coffee. I'll do that. But the life of eating a lot of vegetables and the grains, we've been misled by everybody about we don't need grains. In fact, I had a lot of gastrointestinal issues that I couldn't explain for years. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes when you eat something and several hours later you've got a problem, or the next day you've got a problem. That's all gone away. And so I'm looking back at the things that I was eating that I thought were healthy, that I should be eating. And I'm finding that my body does not like those things for the most part. And it likes the meat. It likes the fat. And the things that we've learned in the last year about that whole thing, about fat. Your body needs fat. Sure isn't what we've been told. Stay away from the butter, eat margarine. We did all that. We ate margarine. And when I started eating real butter, it was like, my gosh, I've been missing this for years. I didn't realize what I was missing. And bacon.
You remember the only eat egg whites, don't eat the yolk.
Yeah, no kidding. And I wouldn't, then what's the point? That's no fun. I'm eating bacon like it's going out of style. I hate to admit it, but I can eat a whole package. And it doesn't bother it. And the funny thing is that I thought that it gave me issues before, and I just stopped eating it, but it was everything. It had to be everything else, because now I'm eating it and I'm loving it. And usually at least a few times a week I have bacon. And if I'm home cooking breakfast in the morning, my wife is still working, and if I do that whole 1 pound package, it's gonna get eaten by me, and maybe not all in one setting, but I'll go back later in the afternoon and maybe I'll snack on a couple pieces of bacon. But the doctor said that's okay. So and it obviously it agrees with me, and it's given me wonderful results. The other weird thing that I've noticed, I've heard a few people talking about it. I think I even saw it on Dr. Berry. Body odor. I'm not using deodorant anymore, and I stopped just to see what would happen, because I saw some other people talking about it, and over the years I've learned that even different kinds of lotion you put on your body, your skin is your biggest organ, and you absorb all of that into your system. So if you're not using really good moisturizers, like in the winter, my skin would get dry in my hands, and so I was more conscious about what kind of moisturizer I was using. But from time to time, I would have problems with deodorant where it would cause a rash under my armpits, obviously. And then I would have to, and maybe I was using too much. I don't know what the issue was, but I switched brands and found a brand that didn't have any of the harm, like the aluminum and all the other things in it, and it seemed to agree with me a lot more. But I would say within the past 2 months, I just stopped using it. And I was outside. It was pretty warm today. I had a project outside. I was in the sun, and I came in and took off my shirt, and I didn't really notice much at all.
And it almost becomes like you in the before times, you kind of feel like I need to wear this antiperspirant, I need to wear this deodorant. But now it's like, and it's unless you're actually thinking I should put something on, you don't feel like going there, right?
No, I don't, and I've proven it to myself by even working up a sweat. It was not the odor was not very noticeable at all. A little bit, but not. I mean, it's got to be some, but nothing like it was before. But my day to day, if I'm not doing any work, I'm not putting any on, and I think that's really better for our bodies. The less stuff you put on it or into it, the better, because even though it may be safe, it's still a man-made. It's still a chemical.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
I think with all that's going on with the things that are in our food, and the pesticides and the things that they spray on the vegetables to make them look good and to stay fresh longer. Um, I just think that the only thing I can call this is a clean way of eating, but it's like some of the other doctors, like Dr. Berry has said, this is our proper human diet. It is what we were designed to eat. It's what our bodies need. Our brains need fat. Our hearts need fat. And most people, when you tell them that, they say, no, you can't do that. And what do you mean you're not eating vegetables? You can't do that. Well, I'm doing it. And you know what? I'm betting my life on it. I'm so confident. I'm okay. I'm doing it, and I'm betting that it's in the long run. It's already proven to me that it's improving my health. So I don't have any desire to change. And people will say, "Don't you miss this? Don't you miss that?" Well, yeah, maybe a little bit, but I like how I feel better than how much I might miss something.
That's very well said. Yeah, that kind of encapsulates a feeling that, most people that have been on this way of eating for a while feel, including myself. Um, yeah. Okay. So how much money would I have to give you to go back to eating a regular diet?
You couldn't give me any amount of money. I as we get older, you realize how important your health is, and we can't control everything in our lives, but the one thing we can control is what we put in our mouths. And I mean, I think God's hands were all over this. The way this all came together for myself and my wife, by meeting this person, this nurse, and getting to know her and her husband, and talking with her, and then her referring us to the doctor, and it. I just really believe that. I mean, I have a lot of faith, and but you couldn't give me any amount of money, because I'm not having these issues that have hampered me, that have held me back uh, for a long time, and I expect things are just going to continue to get better, because like I said, I was a little bit slower at things. My wife, she was going like this. I mean, she was boom, and I was kind of just, but yeah, I'm seeing some changes, and I'm seeing some changes, but things are really kicking in for me now, and I'm excited to see what else is going to happen, because it's all been fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so good to hear, and it's so nice to hear that it's your doctor that initiated it. It's not your doctor that's fighting against you.
Oh, absolutely. And I think for the first, because of the type of doctor she is, I have access to her by phone, by text, by FaceTime, whatever, and get a call back right away. But luckily, I haven't really needed anything. I had one issue in this whole course where I overindulged on some walnuts, which I do eat. I eat pecans, and she said that's okay. And from what I've seen in other sources, that that is a good nut to eat. But I also like walnuts, and I started eating some one day, and I just ate too much, and the next day I was miserable and called her, and I think it was a Saturday, and she called me right back, and that was one of the first questions is, what have you been eating? I said, well, the only thing different is I've ate some walnuts. No, it wasn't some, it was a bunch of walnuts. It was too many walnuts. And she said it was giving me stomach pain, and that was it. And I learned my lesson. But that was the only problem I've had. But other than that, I can't think of any carbs that I'm getting. If it is, it's very, very minor. And I bet before I was eating, I don't even. I bet I was eating 150 grams of carbs a day. I mean, my frozen lunches were, 50 to 60. The cereals had a ton of carbs. The chip. Oh my gosh! I look back and I can't believe I was eating all of this stuff. And the other thing that I didn't know anything about that she opened my eyes to, and then everybody else on YouTube, is the seed oils, how bad those are for us. And I mean, and I looked, I took a deep dive into it and found a good program on it, and that they were originally made for machinery lubrication, because seeds were cheap and plentiful, and they could squeeze all the oil out of it and lubricate machinery parts. And then they thought, someone along the line apparently thought that it would be a good idea to start feeding that to us because it was cheap, but they had to process it with chemicals to make it palatable, right? But then you look at I think one of the ingredients is hexane or something, one of those compounds, and that it does nothing for us except cause inflammation in our bodies. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I went back and we had built up a pantry for emergency. I went back and looked at all the things that we had that had seed oils, most everything, right? I mean, palm oil, cottonseed, grapeseed, canola, all the different seeds. And even some of them, I look at it at the store now, and they say heart healthy. And it's like, you got to be kidding me! It's the furthest thing from heart healthy. So our pantry went from a fully stocked, 5 or 6 shelves to basically empty. Got rid of everything. I didn't care how much money we had spent on it. We weren't going to eat that stuff anymore. So I found something today that I really liked. Was watching YouTube, Dr. Becky Gillespie, Gillaspy, and she put a screenshot from the NIH website, and it said, the lower limit of dietary carbohydrate compatible with life apparently is 0, provided that adequate amounts of protein and fat are consumed. And that, I wrote that down because that to me really says something if NIH is saying that. And and I'm obviously getting enough protein and fats, so I'm not worried about that. So that they recognize that. I'm hoping that the larger medical community will recognize that, and I think more and more are. But I thought that was a pretty good quote.
So, Alan, if people want to reach out to you, how do they get in touch? Have you got a YouTube or social media or anything?
You know, I don't, but I'm becoming encouraged. That my wife and I both we're thinking about starting our own channel to talk about our own journey and to encourage people. So I'll share my email address with you after this is over. Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. So it's fantastic to hear the success you've had and how you're doing so well. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. Thank you so much, Alan.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and I certainly hope that if I could encourage one person to look at this, I that would make me happy. The only thing that I would say as far as advice to anybody is don't do it without doctor's guidance, because I think it's important that you have your labs done before you start, so you know where you're at. You need to know where you're at, and then you can see your progress, which you will see progress. And I know I've heard from other people. Well, my doctor says I can't do that. You know, that would be the worst thing in the world for my health. And I'm saying, oh man. So I thought about how would I handle that if I had a doctor that wasn't supportive. I would just say, I want to try this carnivore diet for 90 days. I would like you to go along with me on this. I want you to check all my labs before I start and give me a chance. And if this doesn't work, if the labs are worse, then I promise I will never say another word about it. That's how I would approach a doctor that doesn't know or doesn't think it will work. Is just say, please help me do this. I have a lot of research I've done to back it up. I think it can help me. Let me do it. And I can't imagine a doctor saying no. But from everything that I've seen, I've never heard of anybody that did not see results. And it's usually a lot less than 90 days.
Thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.